Words to PowerPoint seems like a lot. So I'm going to give you a little brief overview of what I do, how I see this work, why I think it's important, and the models that I come from. And then I'm going to open that up for discussion, and we can talk a little bit about where you see this work, where you see yourself in the continuum of artist social change, if you think it's a viable resource, and how we're integrating that with this business language of social entrepreneurship, and how we're making these decisions about what is better for a person or a commodity in terms of how we invest in them, and then how we measure the gain or the return on that investment, right? So when Jai asked me for the title of the conversation, I thought it was pertinent to talk about engaging investments, because we're talking about community engagement. My focus is community engagement, which, in my honest opinion, is a term that came about because there's a gap in our own social system. Engaging community is a misnomer. Community is already a unified group of people who seems to be engaged in a common goal. So community engagement already seems like we've broken away from what community should be. So in the terms of community engagement from an artistic perspective, I've come up through the ranks of companies like Chuck Davis's African American Dance Ensemble, who uses community engagement as a way to teach or to expand the knowledge of the African diaspora. So there's a very specific pointed focus there. They go into communities, they teach a specific curriculum about African dance, about the African diaspora, and there is a measurable outcome at the end. Did you get it? Do you know it? Can you take the test? Do you have the t-shirt? We have been engaged in your community. Right? Okay, so then we move on to companies like Urban Bush Women or Liz Lemon Dance Exchange, and how they've kind of structured the model has been a little bit different. But then we go to now, because the role of community engagement has become a part of education in schools, in communities, in social groups, where we think we are doing better and proliferating our work to underserved or under basically resourced populations. We have organizations like the National Guild for Community Arts, and they say community engagement describes the people and organizations that are related to a community arts education provider's mission. Students, parents, families, artists, partner organizations, schools, government agencies, and so on. Keep going, right? Government agencies not only include agencies like this, like the National Guild for the Arts, but government agencies also include agencies that I became aware of when I was a social activist for kids at a community-based organization, what we call CBOs, which was the South Bronx Overall Economic Development Corporation. Now, as a part of the South Bronx Overall Economic Development Corporation, I was what they called a youth advocate, which basically meant that I processed children's applications based on if their families were poor enough, if there were enough people in the house, and if I thought they needed the services that we provided. This, for lack of a better term, in my opinion, it's my opinion, you're just talking to me here. This is kid welfare. It was called the Work Investment Act, or the WIA program. And basically, every time these kids came to an art education event, I would check them off, and at the end of the month, they would get a check for participating in what we called their development SP. Right? So these government agencies are set in place to use federal funds to fund these CBOs or community-based organizations, but community-based organizations, if they really only have a vested interest in their economic growth, then they're really just passing out checks to kids and families. And these are families where the level of poverty was so intense that I would get phone calls from parents saying, "Where's the check?" Because it was not just an additional income, it wasn't additional means for their home, it was a part of their household income, right? And they were signing up for these programs to be able to support their family. So sometimes organizations interpret community engagement as collaboration, marketing to diverse audiences, or developing programs for underserved groups. Underserved. We see this word a lot. This could be a lot of things. to what we're really trying to say about this larger economic structure. While those are all worthy and necessary activities, an engaged community arts education provider does more. How is this? How do the arts provider do more? Because usually the arts are the least funded element of the entire program. If you go to look at educational studies, the first thing that gets cut out of schools are arts. Now this is why the niche of community engagement with arts was created. There are organizations who, for a long time, functioned as non-for-profit service organizations. When arts began to be cut out of schools, those organizations transitioned to for-profit providers to the departments of education per state. That means they are eligible for federal funding regardless of their performance, regardless of the numbers of children, but they're then able to, on the back end, employ artists who don't have any other work, and they call them teaching artists. They do trainings, and they provide them with different residency activities to go into these schools to be able to make a living. So then the actual underserved population they're serving is twofold: poor artists and poor kids. So some of the models that I've been a part of have been Urban Bush Women, and Urban Bush Women's mission for community engagement is leveraging dance as a catalyst for social change, consistency, seeking the broadest range of engagement possible. Urban Bush Women has taken the field of community engagement into a larger realm that says, let's not just talk about what we think you should be doing with dance. Let's not just get a group of people together and dance out our problems. Let's talk about where you are, who you are, why this railroad track divides your two communities, why you've never been, why a kid here in Middlebury has never been to Rutland or Burlington. What type of social constructs or what type of invisible gates are keeping you from personal expansion, right? What about that is really impacting your community? And in terms of making this education holistic, Urban Bush Women has solicited the advice and the collaboration of other organizations, mainly the Institute for Survival and Beyond, which does a program called Undoing Racism. So the Institute for Survival and Beyond, they define being racist as having privilege plus power. Doesn't matter what color you are. If you're in a community and you have privilege plus power, that makes you racist. Doesn't make you a bad person. Doesn't mean that you're going to hell. Just means that in that situation, if Ron Leibowitz walked in here right now, he has privilege plus power, I would sit down. Doesn't mean he's a white man or a black woman. Just means in this situation, he is the controlling factor. There's a cause and there's an effect, right? So they do an analysis, and they like to call it "who has their foot in your butt" analysis. Right? I'm cleaning it up a little bit. So they draw this huge circle, right? The Institute for Survival, they draw a huge circle, and they make layers, like a target. You know, like a target would be in the middle, and they put you in the middle, or wherever you feel like you stand. But usually the poorest people in the community are in the center. And those poorest people are subjected to the government, their jobs, the housing system, all these things that they have to be at the beck and call of to survive in the center of that target. But they are the target of all these different elements, right? So they're talking about this in a really holistic way of where you are, where you stand, not where you imagine or perceive you are, not the good you're doing, but what are the real circumstances that are either enhancing or prohibiting you from growing in this situation. And then we move on to Junebug Productions, who they have taken this from a theater aspect. Junebug is based in New Orleans, so they have a program going on right now called the People Say Project, and you can Google it and watch it. They have different episodes. And they've also been a major collaborator with Urban Bush Women, to the point where now Urban Bush Women has moved their Summer Leadership Institute, which trains different teachers, social activists, artists on the methodology that they use in community engagement, and they joined forces with Junebug and moved the entire institute to New Orleans. Mainly because New Orleans, you know, Katrina happened, and that was a huge chasm of showing people where the real divide stands. We are no longer a country that is based on color and privilege. We're based on price and privilege. And if you can pay for it, then you can get a lot more than if you just used to look the part, right? So now this collaboration is moving on towards larger communities producing and presenting not just dance, but dance and theater works that are talking about these struggles of the people who are there and employing local artists who now have been trying to get their work seen probably for years, but now that they are part of this social chasm, everyone wants to look in, right? And then there's the Liz Lerman Dance Exchange. And the Dance Exchange, I think, has been known for this work for a very long time. Liz Lerman is a MacArthur scholar. She's written several books on critical response process. And what she was doing was going into communities and saying, what is here? And let's show everyone, right? Not just, what are you doing? How can we help you? But tell us your story in terms of going to steel mills and talking to the steel mill workers where the steel mills were going out of business, or going to Maryland. And what she did is she took this entire question of what are you in praise of and turned it into a huge project called the Hallelujah Project, which spanned at least, I think, 30 states over 3 years, and then brought the whole thing back to Tacoma Park, Maryland, at the University of Maryland, where her company is housed, and produced Hallelujah USA, which brought all these stories from all these different places she had been and put them on stage for her home community to say, what are we in praise of? And let's watch what these people are going through and what they've overcome, and let's be in praise of this all together. Right? And then, so we get to this question of we're shaping, dissecting, and hopefully creating and co-creating or recreating what the communities have lost, and trying to be that gap or that catalyst or that bridge between past and future, or actually just past and reality, really assessing what's happened so we can live in the present together. And so then it brought me to the question of what is community engagement, and then what is investment? What are we really talking about here? What are we putting in? We are going and we're spending some time with people. Great. You guys are spending time together right now. When we leave here, there's going to be something that we can measure. There's going to be something that has gotten better. We may feel good. There may be a warm, tingly feeling. We may be upset because the man has got their foot in our butt. But are we going to do it really? Is there really something there, right? So we're talking about, what is an investment? And then, the normal cookie cutter definition is an investment is something done with the expectation of gain, that upon thorough analysis has a high degree of security for the principal amount, as well as security of return within an expected period of time. And if this was what I based my work on, you should just leave right now. Because I'm never going to see that. I'm never going to see that. The girls that I've come in contact with my own community engagement program, Project Becoming, have come from households where I would give them a yoga mat. They would go home. They would come back the next day. They would tell me that their mothers were laughing at them. Because, what do you think? What do you think you're going to do? Be like that lady on TV? You're going to do yoga now? Or you're better than me? La, 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 la. Right? So what am I supposed to say to that? I get to be with this kid for a week, maybe 2 weeks. Maybe she'll keep in contact, maybe she won't. But maybe the life or even the propositions that I'm asking her to think about are way too big for her. So I may not see her again for 20 years. And by that time, I'm not going to, a lot of these kids, I have a freshman walked up to me at the at the academic forum, and I was like, oh my God, I thought you were in high school. Right, so it's a really, by the time I see these seeds that we plant in these community engagement projects come to fruition, if I was really expecting on a return to feed myself, pay my mortgage, no, it's not going to happen. It's not the work you do to make good for yourself. Yeah? So, you can't guarantee the return on an investment that has free will. It's a person. Yeah? You can teach, parents in the room know this. You can teach, you can scold, you can reward. At the end of the day, a person has free will. And the best you can do is to educate the commodity on the liabilities they face. Hope they make the choices that yield gain for themselves and the communities they inhabit. So in terms of Project Becoming, I don't know what it's like to be an adolescent girl right now. I know what it's like to be an adolescent girl and grow up in a small town. I think every community is just like a small town, right? So I'm equating the challenges that I had as a young girl with what they're going through now. Just 10 times worse. So we started Project Coming in 2005 with $2,500 in a room in the Bronx called, it was like a printmaking shop, and they just let us use the room for a week. And I bought all this stuff, and I invited all these girls to come, and maybe 30 of them applied, and 5 showed up. And that was the kicker to let me know that I had no clue about what the real question was. Because this program was free. Everything was provided for these kids, including the food. And it was like, why wouldn't you show up? Because my mom has to go to work, and I have to keep the 3 little kids, and so maybe I can come on Tuesdays, but I can't stay the whole day, because then I have to go home and make dinner, and I had no idea what these kids were really up against. I'm just like, come on, come over for a week, it's free. I give you some, we're gonna hang out. Right? So then we had to go back and really check ourselves on what do we have to do to make sure that these kids get here. And it wasn't about spending time with the kid, it was about spending time with their whole family. So that then we could bring the kid into a situation that was more malleable and more isolated, so that we could then assess who they were and what they needed. So what we did is that we started to have these contracts, basically, these family contracts. So you have to take this home. This is not just the application that you fill out and you say, yeah, I want to be there. Somebody in your house has to sign it, and then they have to come and have dinner with us. Everybody has to come. And we have to sit down and we have to tell them why we think this is important. Ask them if they really think it's important. Is it free daycare for you? What is it for you? What are we providing for you? Because we really want to have this conversation about where we want this to go at the end of the week. Because these Project Becoming sessions are usually intensive study. We keep these girls Monday through Friday for 6 hours a day. And then we have a showing on Saturday. So you saw some of the workshops going on the video when you came in. So it has to be a commitment, but not just to the time, but to really participating fully. Like, you have to be able to, in the first day, we call the dancing that we do the medicine and the candy. We're just, they're like, we're going to dance today? We're going to dance now? Is it time to dance now? Sure. Yeah, we'll dance a little bit. But, did you write your journal? Okay. We'll dance some more. Okay, great. Did you finish your body map? Really, because at the end of the day, there's a large discussion. And so we figured out that in order to even get the attention of the child, we had to be realistic about what environments they're in outside of the environment we're trying to create. And I think that that's where a lot of community engagement programs, especially with young people, fail. They think that they're providing the greatest thing since sliced bread, and this kid loves them with all their heart, and they want to be there with them because they're the best place, and that home life they have is so horrible, but you have this time to escape. But, you don't have to be a psychologist. You can just watch Law and Order or something. You know that people who are abused go back to the abuser. Right? It's not about, oh, my life is so horrible and you are providing this for me. It's like, that's my mom. She could be on drugs. She could not be feeding me, but, dude, that's my mom. I like you, lady. Or Miss. That's what they call it. Anytime in the Bronx, it's just Miss. Miss. Can I go to the bathroom? Miss. Yes, you will. Right? So this relationship that you're building with them is about, first of all, earning their trust. And then they'll listen. But you have to earn the trust of the entire family. Because these families are the same people who are at the whim of the housing market. The housing market, if they can afford to be in the housing market, the public housing system, welfare, food stamps, and day-to-day, who knows what will happen. Sending their kid to a school that's, probably too dangerous for the kid to walk to by themselves, but the mama can't leave the little baby. It's a whole dichotomy of circumstances, right? That we have to somehow try to not ignore, but get over to get to the point of them being there. Yeah? And so that they can have some time to concentrate on themselves. No one's really asked a lot of. And this question is not about it's not about economic status, but nobody really has ever asked a kid, how are you? going to give you some, did you want to go get a toy? Great. Just talking to be pretending that you're paying attention. You know, you guys are not far removed from high school, right? Did anyone ever just really sit down with you and be like, really, how are you? This whole boy thing, you all right with that? You know, I know you might want to have a drink, but really, you know, I did that, I puked on my mom. Like, told them the truth. Told them the real truth of like, I tried that, it failed for me, and this is why. Not just, don't do it or I'll kill you. Really, why? Because these kids are not in a situation these days to not understand why. When I was, back, their age, so not a lot of people told me why. And so I tried some things, failed at some things, got my feelings hurt myself. But at the end of the day, the risk factor was not what it is today. I was in a small town, and regardless of if I thought I was getting away with it or not, my mother knew exactly where I was. And if she didn't, 3 days later she did, because somebody told her that it's all coffee. It's the bottom line. But these kids that I work with have a Metro car in New York City. They could be anywhere at any time for $2.25 with anyone. And that's not, that liability is not ready for return. Yeah? So, the program, you have a couple handouts here. This is a curriculum overview, and then this is a kind of day-by-day analysis of what really happens, and at a glance of what the structure of the curriculum is like. And we ask basically a question a day. Who am I? Who do I want to, I'm going to read this, so don't put it out of order. It's okay. Who am I? What do I like about my body? What makes me strong? Who do I want to become? And at the end of the week, we say, who am I now? Yeah? Hoping, not that for this whole life-changing, this program has changed me, I'm just the greatest person ever now, and nothing is going to ever bother me, but having a vision for who you want to be. Who am I now? Well, now I know that, some of these girls have said things like, well, now I know that I have anger issues, and that when I'm taking it out on the people at school, it's not really about them. Great. Great. What are you going to do now? Well, now I'm going to try to write in my journal about it, and then instead of going to my guidance counselor, I can just tell the people who are bothering me, and then maybe we can move on. Right? We use these things like, capoeira as conflict resolution. Where these girls, some of these girls, we've done this in high schools, middle schools, juvenile detention centers for girls, where we would come in and think that, oh, great, you guys are doing well. There's been one person who's been here the whole time. We're going to bring you a reward. What would you like? And she's like, I want a CD. And the CO or the guard would not tell us that CDs are contraband. So then we show up with this gift for this girl who's done a great job, and all of a sudden she can't have it. So everything we've told her for the last week or so, or the last month that we've been there every Saturday, is all of a sudden out the window. Because it's been undermined by a structure that wasn't explained. No one's communicating, right? And so you have to also understand that this is the basis. The basis of community engagement, is partnership. When you don't have a good community partner, you might as well just be talking to a wall. Because everything you say or everything you do or the methods that you're using are going to be undermined by the system or the structure that's there. Right? So this is why we had to understand that we had to go to the families, because the families are the immediate power structure. Right? So if we're not educating the families, then everything we're saying to these girls when they go home is being undermined. Oh, yoga mat, what do you think you're the lady on TV now? Oh, ha ha ha. For a little girl who just thought she'd been for a day, she's like, oh yeah, I seen this on TV, Miss Christal. This is good. Oh, my arm's hurt. Right? Like she's been doing something that she only thought that rich people on TV do. And then she goes home and her mom was like, oh, you think you can do that? Blah, 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 blah. Right? So what do? In terms of our program, a lot of times what we're missing are good community partners. We're missing good community partners who are willing to invest the time to do the research, invest the money to train people to sustain the program after we leave. So then the girls actually have a support system for this thing, this fabulous thing that came for a week, and now it's gone. You know? And because we're a dance company and we're not a CBO, we're a not-for-profit, but we're not a CBO, right? We're a small dance company that's, by the grace of God, survived for almost 10 years. But it's a dance company with very high aspirations. It's a dance company. There's no one there that can be in the office all day long doing follow-up calls, emails. Is she okay? I need them calling the school, getting their grade reports, checking with their guidance counselors, trying to figure out if they are still on board or on track, right? And having these tracking systems, which then transfers back to we have to have good community partners because funding sources want to see numbers, right? And if I can give anecdotals all day about the growth that we've seen or the growth that we've interacted with, but without that full-time staff crunching these numbers, tracking these kids from day 1 to 3 years later, I can't tell a funding agency that I have 99.9% success rate with decreasing risky behaviors. I use the language, but that's the whole mechanism that community engagement is under, right? So, what are your questions? What are your questions? What are your thoughts? Questions, comments, concerns? Yes.
I'm just curious about if you're interacting with a new community partner, one that you haven't worked with before. Have you developed kind of specific questions that you know are really key questions that you want to ask them to kind of start that relationship off?
Yeah.
Take that relationship, and what are they?
Who are the girls you want this program for? What type of infrastructure do you have in place to support it once we leave? And are you going to be there when we're here? Are you just calling us in to do something to take up some time for another program and you're not going to be around like a substitute teacher? You know, oh, we got a sub this week, I'm going to go home and hang out. Are you going to be there watching what, participating, learning with it? Yes?
How did the girls get chosen for this program?
That depends on the community partner. So the last one we launched was in Geneva, New York, with the help of Hobart Williams Smith, the dance program at Hobart Williams Smith. And this was like, how many years did this take? Maybe 5. The company went to Hobart Williams Smith to perform because we had an alumni of Hobart Williams Smith in our company at that time. And the director brought us in for a concert, and then we talked to her about Project Coming. She's a member of New York Dance Force. 5 years later, she finally got the funding to have Project Coming. So she opened it up to the high school and the middle school. And the application is pretty simple. Who are you? And there are like 2 essay questions, depending on if it's high school or middle school. And we say these are essay questions, and we always come to the application with the most grandiose of expectations, and we say, oh, there's a 500 word or less minimum. And some of these girls just, are Geneva was special because we had maybe the valedictorian of the 7th grade and a girl who could barely read, right? All in the same group. They would have never interacted with each other. They would have never been anywhere in the same vicinity of the school because she would have been sequestered somewhere in a tutoring room and this other girl would have been sequestered somewhere in an AP bio room, right? So I think that's the largest gamut we've ever run. But that was, again, the community partner. Going to the school every day and saying, hey, did you guys talk about this today? Did they hand out the applications? Like really being persistent about being there because we can't do recruitment from New York. Yes?
Could you tell us a little bit more about how you use kinesthetic learning to explore these issues? And then also, do you see any potential for using the actual performances to advance awareness of the social issues that you are exploring?
Oh, so the main reason that I think the program is successful being run by an all-female dance company is because girls have body issues. And, we like to talk about this, oh, girls have body issues, yeah, eating disorders is so sad, blah, blah, blah. No. Oh, well, I'm 33 years old. I have some body issues. I just had a kid. Being inhabited by an alien is a body issue. Right? So we're talking about this like, oh, it's this little thing that they go through, they get over it. No, this is something you're going to be dealing with for the rest of your life. So we're dancing with these girls not to make them physically fit. We're dancing with these girls so that they understand that this thing is powerful. Not that this thing is elegant or graceful or able to do these things that other people give them attention for, but this thing is going to define who you are to other people. And if you can't make the outside match the inside, then everything you're doing is a show. Whether it's a good show or a bad show, it's a show. Right? So the kinesthetic learning comes into play when we're trying to match the inside with the outside, which a lot of dancers only ever experience on stage. The authentic person really is only ever when other people are watching and their lights on. Other times, that character is shrunk. You know, it's small on the inside, and they're walking around inhabiting a body that's just there as show. It's physically fit. It's pleasing to look at. But what is it in terms of who that person is, the character of the person? So the kinesthetic and the character development is what we're trying to match. One of the exercises that we have that really gets to the root of this is that we have the girls partner up, and they lie down on a huge piece of like restaurant table cover paper, and they trace the outline of their body. And their job is to then go into the map, this body map, and give us a tour of the topography of what has happened to this body over the however many years they are, 13 years, right? So we get things like, oh, this is when my daddy broke my heart and my parents got divorced. Or, oh, this is when, you know, I fell, my brother scraped my knee today. We get all this. They go social, emotional, physical on this one map, right? And then the key is they have to explain it. So then it brings up the issue for them that they may have not thought about for a while. But then it gives us, the facilitators, who are dancers, who are inhabiting our bodies all the time, a different lens on looking at them. So I'm watching this girl who's telling me that, you know, her heart is broken. She doesn't feel like she's pretty. Oh, this is the scar, or this is where her hair fell out, or blah, blah, blah. And she's like this. And then I get this same kid in 2 weeks to lead her other friends across the floor, and by the time it's over, by the time we have these final showings and sharings for the parents, she's raising her hand to talk. That, for me, is the return. Because on day one, she was like, I don't even know why I'm here. Yeah. You know, I don't write. I don't even talk that much. You know? So those type of kinesthetic changes that have to occur from the inside out, right? And a lot of times we think of art as outside in. I'm going to give you this exercise, you're going to do it, and it's going to turn you inward, right? No, I have to figure out what's in here first, and then bring that out, because girls don't develop that way. Boys do. And I thought it was a whole, you know, crock, till I had one, right? Because I thought I was having a girl, and I was all prepared. I was like, oh yeah, ready. Ready. She is going to be fierce. I got it. She'll be blah, 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 and then out popped this penis. And so I realized that there is nature and there is nurture, right? But the aggressiveness of boys, the bravado that they walk into the world with that body intact, is much different than a girl. Much different. Maybe female athletes have a different perspective on it, and they sometimes have that. But my theory about that is oftentimes that when they're not performing their athletic feats, that little girl in them is still like this. You know, waiting to be validated by something else aside from what they're doing. Just who they are. Yeah? And so that whole amalgamation of being an accumulation of your environment, your learning, and your opportunity is really what we're trying to let these girls understand. And so they can start to recalculate the formula or recalibrate the formula for themselves. And they can learn what they want to take in and what they don't, right? So we educate them on, listen, you know, I know that you're in this class and they tell you that, you it's the slow math class, but do you really believe that? That's really what it's about. Do you believe it? And they're like, what you mean, miss? I mean, that's what the tests say, that's what they put me in there so I could do better. Are you doing better? I don't know, I'm trying. Who's telling you this? A lot of it is just really about what they're hearing. Because they're still emerging or evolving human beings. They don't know. I mean, I kind of feel like, I'm 33, I still don't know. I was telling some people the other day that one of the high school kids told me, he looked through my Facebook pictures and he was like, what do? Just reinvent yourself when you get bored? I said, sort of. I said, I'm generally the same person, but I get tired of looking like that. And he was like, oh, I respect it. So, it's one of those things where they are portraying a thing and they're hoping the world believes it. And when you say, oh, I don't really believe it, do you believe it? And then they start to be like, oh, well, maybe not, maybe I should do something else. Right? And, I think a lot of people, regardless of the age, come to that at different stages of their life. How many times I shaved my head? And that's, the whole cultural aspect of black women shaving their head is big. My mother has fallen out on several occasions. Did you cut your hair again? What's wrong? What's going on? Those social clues that we give about how we value things. And when the thing that is supposed to be valued is not, then there's a way that you have to be socially aware of who you are to defend your choice. And these girls they don't have the ammunition to defend their choices. Why didn't you come to school today? Well, my mom told me I had to go help her clean up the houses with her and other ladies to make the money. And for a teacher, the teacher automatically gets horrified. Oh my God, I'm calling ACS. This is childish. You have to go to school. That child is getting an education. It may not be the education that you want them to have, but that's an education. She knows that money makes her family go around, and she has to go participate in that. Is your hand up?
Yeah.
Yes.
Could you give a couple reasons why you don't offer similar programs for guys?
Because I don't know. Not my forte. It's not, I've talked to a lot of friends and colleagues who are males and talked to them about developing a parallel curriculum, but I do not feel like it's my strength. And I would be doing the boys or the young men a huge disservice. I would just be another woman in the room telling them who I think they should be as men. And who am I to do that? Yeah.
So this is kind of a strange question that you probably don't have a good answer. I don't know. It's hard.
I'll try my best.
Okay. So I'm interested in community development work, but not in the arts. But it just seems like going in, it's so hard to go in and be because automatically by going in, you're implying that there's something wrong. You're implying that there's something that needs to be fixed, and that's just the attitude is a really hard one to go in with because people look at you, you're well. Clearly, what I'm doing is right. I want to work with obesity prevention in children. Mm-hmm. And it's you go in and you're calling my kid fat? What are you doing? Obviously, in the world of, all health sciences, that obese child is a problem. But, the mother's I feed my kid.
Exactly.
But going into, these kids and telling them that, what they're doing, you're not, you're basically going in and being there's something that needs to be changed.
Yeah.
And that's, how do you do that?
I've thought about this obesity question a lot, but for me, the obesity question still comes back to the poverty question. Well, there are people who can't provide things or what they think their children should have, but they can feed them all day. They're like, oh, you want McDonald's? Here's $1. Oh, you want some chips? I got 25 cents. It makes them feel like they're still doing something. They can't buy you a $300 toy. You can't get a weed, but you can get a slice of pizza. Right? And so I think, again, it's the back end of educating the parents on the other things that they could be giving, aside from the food. Right? So I think, for me, that the only way I can answer that question is to say that it's an individual family assessment, and that going in as a friend then this is where I'm saying that the structures didn't come into play. Because what kind of friend are you with a badge on? And some recommendations, right? So it's hard to fund these initiatives that are really just about finding new ways of being better or finding new ways of doing our best, but not using the hierarchy of help. Yes?
I have a question that goes back to the early part of your presentation. You put up some words that really just resonated with me. You said that when it comes to community engagement, both parties experience change, which for some people would be shocking and audacious. I quote the previous questions. You go in to be the change agent. So I was wondering if you could give us 2 examples. One of where you successfully engaged maybe a reluctant community partner and got them to change, and maybe one that failed and you had to say this isn't going to work and we have to back out if that ever happened.
Yeah. I'm not going to say I never should have backed out, but I'm going to say I have never backed out. I'm going to say that in those situations, I make my organization rise to the occasion. If that money has to come out of my pocket, or if those hours have to come out of my life. Because at that point, the loss is greater than the gain. Those kids are going to lose again because some grown person over here forgot to do their bureaucratic part. That's not their problem, right? So I never backed out. There have been situations where I have had to educate the community partner on what we were doing. Because we're a dance company, there are people who, especially will go through, we're a vendor with the Department of Education in New York. There are people who will go onto the DOE vendor website and be like, oh, dance, we want dance, please. We're not teaching dance. And then when the program gets there, and they're like, well, is there going to be a show? And we're like, no. And they're like, but it's dancing, right? And we're dancing. They're dancing. And they're just like, well, we don't understand. Did you read the program materials? They were like, no, we just talked to Alex. No. Then we have to go and sit with the principal. Now, this happened at a really great school. I don't know if any of you have seen the documentary Waiting for Superman. Jeffrey Canada, we were in his school at Harlem Children's Zone at 125th Street in Lexington. And it was not his fault. He wasn't there. He was out being Superman, right? But his assistant principals were not reading the materials. Therefore, they were scheduling the program alongside 2 other mentor programs. They were trying to build this thing. They were trying to part and part. They were trying to get the most out of the 3 hours that they were keeping these kids after school, which I understood what they were trying to do, but we weren't the program to do that. Right? So I had to re-educate them and so actually tell the kids who were a part of our program that you cannot do everything. And for a kid, that's hard to hear. And for them, it was a little bit contrary to their mission of, we are building these kids to be able to do everything, da, 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 da. And I'm like, yeah, they're doing things, but they're not doing them well. So let's go back. And that's really, I think, the only situation where we've really had to we've had to have my girlfriend likes to call these come to Jesus meetings. We had to be like, no, everybody sit down, stop. No more dancing till the grown people understand what needs to happen. Yes?
Sort of similar to that, Christal. How about reciprocity and how do you approach a community partner in terms of mutual benefit of?
Yeah. Well, for us, these days have been particularly, and I say the past 7 years, have been particularly easy for us because people do not have a program for girls. And they want one, and they don't know what to do with it, and they've tried these quick fixes, and they haven't worked. And so what we do is we're really there. We don't make any money on this. My goal is to give them the week of us being there as facilitators, pay the facilitators who are there, pay for the supplies, and then give them the curriculum and say, please, keep this going. So that, I think, has been one of the good things about it, or the easiest points about it, because after the first time, the money is, because they're really worried about the money. community partners like, where am I going to get the money? What am I going to do with this? And I'm like, well, the money is not, we don't want your money. We just want you to do the work. So if you can pay yourself, by all means, do the work. So that's been maybe our selling point, and it makes it a lot easier for us. But again, it's really hard because a lot of community partners that we do approach, small YMCAs, YWCAs, high school mentorship programs with girls, programs like that, they don't even have the initial money to pay for the facilitation, So even that is hard. And we've had, volunteers go in, but when you don't have that whole structure in place, the girls are not getting the full experience. Yeah.
This is fantastic. Thank you so much. And I have a question that's related to the handout.
Yeah, which one?
I love the question, who am I?
Uh-huh.
And who do I want to become?
Uh-huh.
And if you don't mind shifting the attention to the Middlebury community,
yes.
Another question that I think about a lot is simply, what do I want to do?
Yeah.
And so, give us some guidance, Christal. This Social Entrepreneurship Center is new.
Mm-hmm.
What should we do?
I think in terms of people who are interested in studying social entrepreneurship, you should tell them or teach them that dreams are big, results are small. And Liz, I think, says it the best because she says, art is big, life is big, but nothing is too small for us. And that's where, we have these big ideas. We're going to save Ethiopia. Yes! There you go. You might save someone's home in Ethiopia, right? I'm going to go to Middlebury Union and I'm going to teach all those kids what they should be doing and how they could benefit from a great liberal arts education and that farming life is not the end-all, be-all. No, you're not. You're going to go in there with that attitude and you're going to teach them that rich people always think they're right. And they don't know the front or back of a cow. So I think the first thing I would say for anyone who wants to be a social entrepreneur is to self-assess. Be very honest about where your assumptions are, where your weaknesses are. Okay, we go back to business language. Do a SWOT. The SWOT analysis, your strategic plan analysis. Strengths, weaknesses, outcomes, and what is it? Traps or something. Threats. Traps, threats. So you do your SWOT. Know your community. Do your analysis before you go in there. Don't go in there thinking that your goodwill will change someone's free will. Because it won't. And if you want someone to change, you have to give them another viable option. Not something that's just the best or the better. You have to give them a viable option. You have to tell them how to get there. People can tell me my son and I travel back and forth to church to Burlington. For months, people have been saying, so do you come through Heinsberg? I'm like, no. Don't know that route. The other day, my GPS led me through that route, and I was like, oh man, on my way there, this is what we have to realize that people are going through on the inside. On my way there, I'm like looking for something. Man, it seems like it's taking me longer. I can't measure my progress here, and my clothes, I feel like I'm going out of the way. And this is what people are going through when we're posing these questions. They don't have any tangible landmarks. Who am I? I don't even know who I was. I'm walking in the dark. What are you asking me, lady? Right? So we have to be aware that even though we're telling them a better route, the process is not that clear. There's not going to be, ding, I hit the bell. Yes, I'm going the right way. Turn left in 2.3 miles. There's no voice in the back, right? There's a voice in here, and if we haven't trained this voice to be as confident as we want to be, or we think these people should be, then we're all going off course. Yes?
As an artist, how do you, in your process of your career, how do you sort of arrive at doing this type of work versus other? I don't know if your career was purely performance.
No. My performance career was a track that God put me on to learn some more stuff because all I ever wanted to be was a teacher. But I didn't know nothing when I was ready to. I would have been in a small town teaching shuffleball change, right, and knowing nothing about life. So I've had this awesome performance career, and I still get to perform, and it's great because it's the hook. No one's gonna. This is your question. This is your problem. No one's gonna listen to you if they don't think you're anybody. And that's sad, but it's true. If I was just Christal Brown, the person who wanted to work with young girls, and I had never danced, or you couldn't YouTube or Google who I was, I wouldn't get in half the doors I do. Right? So it was just a different track, you know? So, I mean, I thank God for it, because I get to do what I love and do the work that I feel like I was purposed to do, not just the work that I do to make a living. Yes?
How do you dancers deal with situations that I'm sure arise when you are talking to these girls about who they are, and say they're doing these topographical maps?
Yeah.
And you get to the bit, well, this is where I was raped, or this is where this trauma happened to me. How do you deal with that? Do you train your dancers to deal with that specifically? Do you bring in the partners? How do you plan for that ahead of time?
So at this point, we have facilitation trainings for the project becoming facilitators. And one of them is led by an alumni dancer who then went to graduate school for psychotherapy and arts therapy. So she comes in and she gives that session. So but most of the time, it's really about, most of the time that we've run into, it hasn't been about the experience. It's just been about the girl feeling like she's heard.
Right.
And so most of the time, our advice from the psychotherapist is, listen, you're off schedule. This session should be ended by now. Because we'll be moving on to the next thing. But no one's ever listened to her talk, so we're just going to listen. Everybody's going to listen. Yeah. And then it triggers things in the rest of the group of what it's like to listen. Because a lot of these girls, even though, they're not being heard, they want to be heard. And so they're really good at over-talking each other. Really good at putting their situation first. Because they're in a room where they know people will listen. But it's just like any underserved population. When you're forced to be invisible, you make yourself more visible. This is something we see all the time. I mean, how many times am I in New York in a public school and I have to tell somebody to pull their pants up? I'm not telling them to pull their pants up because it's really the style. These are people who just want to be seen. These little boys want my attention. Boy, pull your pants up before I smack. And he's like, oh boy, he's brown. All right, I got you. But you just want to talk to me. I told him that. I said, you want to talk to me, just call me, okay? You don't have to do all this. You don't have to be seen as a fool in public. Just call me. And that's really what that's the intimacy for them. And they're missing that. And that's a whole generation of missing that. Of like, I'm not going to call you on the phone. We're not going to sit down and talk face to face. I'm going to text you what I really want to say. Text. I call them Facebook gangsters. You want to say this. Would you really say it if I was standing in front of you? Probably not. Right? So, it's that whole intimacy and that kind of, I can hide behind this other form of communication. Right? Yeah.
When we talk about social entrepreneurs, there's this huge range of definitions from people who come up with business solutions for social problems to people who are change agents. It was almost a throwaway or an aside that really resonated with me. You mentioned there are times when you're involved in a project and the money isn't there and you personally make it happen. If you wouldn't mind, could you share a little bit more about that? Because I think there's a burden that a lot of people carry when they want to be social entrepreneurs, which is their boards say, if we don't have a good business plan, we don't have a net cash flow, we're failing. How much in the real world really operates that way as opposed to you suck it up and open up your wallet because the program is going to end if you don't take it out?
I would say 75% operate with open your wallet. And then the board members usually feel guilty about it and they open their wallets too.
Well, thank you, Christal.
No, thank you. Thank you.